Welcome to City Commission Briefs. In today's edition, we're going to talk about bicycle transportation planning. That's a big topic in our community as we're working to become a bicycle-friendly community. Kristen Bennett, our transportation planner in Mobile GR, will give a presentation to the City Commission talking about what we've done in bicycle planning so far and where we're headed. Kristen is working with a team of city staff and with the community to present a bicycle plan to the community and to the City Commission in June of next year. She'll talk about the process and how you can be engaged.
Get down to my level here. Kristen Bennett, I'm the Transportation Planning Supervisor for the city. And what we're going to do is do an overview of, we were requested to develop a bicycle transportation plan for the city, kind of following on the heels of both Vital Streets and GR4, to kind of drill that down in a little more detail. So we were tasked with that starting this summer, trying to build on the groundwork that we set with Vital Streets, the GR4 plan that covers downtown, and then of course Driving Change, which has done a lot of research and analysis surrounding bicycle safety, bicycle crashes, and also the community's understanding and knowledge of the rules and responsibilities, regardless of whether they're driving or bicycling. So the idea is to try to get a bicycle plan that can kind of cover the full range of topics, not just the lines on the map, for riding facilities, but all the things that go into making bicycling work, whether it's for transportation, recreation, whatever purpose people want to use this mode of transportation or mode of travel. So education and safety, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation and asset management of what we put out there. And the goal also is to have sort of relevant and responsive and actionable recommendations that actually can push forward into being projects and programs, whether by the city or with partners in the community. So we started going back and actually looking where we started. We've started talking about bicycling back in the city's master plan, in the balanced transportation chapter, the desire to have more travel options, that they're safe travel options, and that, but again, it was sort of the focus was on the lines on the map predominantly. We also had an effort internally to develop a bicycle and facilities plan. It was never really adopted, but it was sort of a starting conversation internally. And then kind of the big jump happened in about 2010, where there were some staff assigned efforts. There was a desire to really start putting designated bike facilities besides just trails onto the ground. And so 16 miles of bike lanes were identified, and those sort of moved forward using sort of opportunistic strategies of road paving projects, much like we still do today, but it was the first efforts to have actual designated facilities on the street. Again, we started talking about bicycling in Green Grand Rapids. That was a bigger conversation because it did, of course, talk about riding facilities, but it also said that there needed to be other things going along with it, education, enforcement, and how do you actually support people riding, whether it's bicycle skills training and outreaching into the community. So it didn't just focus on those lines on the map. We, of course, were fairly early in passing some complete streets legislation in 2011. We started moving through that process of sustainable streets, which again kept focusing on those themes that we need a transportation system that works for everybody. And then, of course, that's leading into the major effort of Vital Streets. And Vital Streets focused on creating that process between green streets and complete streets, but again, kept focusing on the need to create an accessible transportation network, regardless of what kind of mode you choose to travel with or modes. In many cases, people like to choose multiple ways of getting around the community. And so you've probably are very familiar with all the maps. Of course, we had the sort of Vital Streets types, whether they're the residential or the urban center or the crosstown connector type streets. But then there was the effort to move to sort of a mode emphasis with ones that were either transit streets or ones that were focused on truck or vehicular. And some were prioritized, of course, as bicycle priority streets, whether they were focused on commuting or sort of community type uses. These are just our ward breakdowns of those kind of recommendations, Ward 2 and then Ward 3. So where are we at? A lot has changed. I grew up here and used to ride a lot with not a lot of facilities. So a lot has changed since I returned a year ago. We've obviously had our complete street policy. We started assigning some staff time. In 2012, we had about 20 plus miles of bike lanes designated. That first active commute week, we had a bike map, and we first received a bronze designation for bicycle-friendly communities, which is a national recognition. Where we're at today, about 5 years later, is that we've almost quadrupled the amount of on-street facilities that we have. We have one of the first cycle tracks in the state of Michigan up on Monroe. We have trails, of course, off-street. There's bike racks on all the buses that travel throughout the city. We're starting to get more bike parking through various mechanisms, and we have more people bike commuting. That's actually coming out in our statistics nationally. And so we've looked at that. We have those existing bike facilities. This is sort of citywide, Ward 1, Ward 2, and Ward 3. But still, you can see sort of there's a lot of disconnects in terms of trying to make that a true network. And so that was sort of the desire of getting behind a much more detailed bike plan. Some other aspects of where we are today, we have driving change, which was extremely innovative and very effective. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and we've been out doing a lot of community outreach right now for our bike share feasibility study, and people often remark about driving change. They're very aware of the messaging. We were the first to have a 5-foot passing law. We also have continue to grow with Active Commute Week. We have bicycle-friendly businesses and universities now, not just the city having its bronze level designation. So we have a culture that's growing around bicycling, much like in other cities around the United States. And we also have it mentioned in even more plans, such as our GR Forward plan, our Parks Master Plan, of course, is covering trail components. And there's new planning initiatives underway. I mentioned the bike share study that we're in the middle of, definitely in the throes of it right now. There's the river trail guidelines that are being led through DGRI and the engineering department. And then DGRI is also kicking off some downtown streetscape guidelines, and bicycle elements will be part of that. Yet we still have that Bronze Bicycle Friendly Communities Award. We did reapply in August, so we're just awaiting to see if we've moved up a notch, although the bar continues to get set higher. So we haven't started a true public outreach for doing a plan, but we are asking general bicycle questions as part of our bike share study. What we've been hearing is a lot. Assistant City Manager asked me to bring some maps. I actually brought maps from a meeting we did just last Thursday, and people just talked to us, and we'd write Post-it notes. This just happens, I think the first one's maybe Third Ward. People were popping Post-it notes, and this is just from one meeting. And so there's a general appreciation that we've made a good start, but there's a desire for something more comprehensive, and there's a desire to have bicycling being sort of throughout kind of all those elements that they talked about, sort of the 5 E's: education, engineering, enforcement, evaluation, and encouragement. What we're also hearing is that there's a need to really bring that connectivity together between bikeways to get to in places like people want to go, whether it's work, schools, recreational facilities. They want to connect with adjacent communities, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, but having those relationships with adjacent communities. They have concerns a lot about some major physical barriers: bridges, rivers, the freeways. Railroads, how do we get around those that create these impediments to connectivity? Of course, everybody loves trails. They like to see more of that. They like to see better connections, year-round access to trails. And there's an overriding concern about bicycling with traffic and the anxiety of more distracted driving, people not paying attention. I even had a woman tell me at an event that she and her 10-year-old were yelled at. And so they just wanted to stop riding, being yelled at by adults in cars, which is concerning. And they're recognizing that sidewalk riding is a problem, but they often admit that they go to the sidewalk because that's the only place they feel safe. So key areas we want to address that Vital Streets and other plans haven't addressed is trying to identify the type of standalone projects, bicycle projects we have. Vital Streets, of course, was a street network plan, so it didn't cover off-street trails and trail connections and trail access. And it didn't drill down to things like intersections and crossings and underpasses, overpasses that might be necessitate for connectivity. The mode overlay is really helpful, but there's no like high, medium, low priority as to what direction should we head first or where, and what connections should we be making first. And I think the other thing is that we have the opportunity, are there existing bike facilities that should be upgraded for safety or other kind of connectivity improvements that might be shown on Vital Streets, but that we need to make those identifications. What other types of corridors might not be necessarily identified in Vital Streets that could be good options to create connectivity. And then what kind of connections into adjacent communities, because we kept hearing that loud and clear. We need to get to and from, whether it's Wyoming, Kentwood, East Grand Rapids, Walker. They want to get to other places for work or other purposes. Likewise, Vital Streets, we engaged at a different level in terms of conversations, and it didn't necessarily cover those other aspects outside streets. And so what we've been learning from our process with Bike Share is that particularly going out to community events, we're getting a lot by going where people are, and we're going to a huge range of different types of events. We were at the Latino 5K this weekend, and then went to the Alger Pop-Up Market right afterwards, and getting a lot of interesting input by going out to people as opposed to trying to have meetings that they come to us. And I think we'd like to follow that process as well going forward. We can certainly use a lot of the goals that were established in Vital Streets, as well as GR Forward for the downtown area. I think those are certainly good baseline goals to grow from and have people react to. And that we have a lot of current work that we've done that can feed into this plan. In particular, we did a 30-plus page application for that Bike-Friendly Communities application, which really sets the tone as to where we're at and can feed a lot of information into sort of an existing conditions of where the community stands right now. Plus, like I said, we're getting good engagement about bicycling in general with the Bike Share feasibility study that we're doing right now. So staff is recommending a kind of a plan outline that focuses on establishing first, kind of building off Vital Streets with those vision and values and those goals, doing that sort of existing conditions work, which we've got a lot accomplished already, and then kind of how we're currently investing in bicycling throughout the community and what things are in the pipeline. And then the other items would be how would the bicycle network be laid out, kind of in a more refined manner than Vital Streets lays out. Bicycle policies that might still need to be changed. We've changed a number associated with driving change, et cetera, but are there other ones that should be changed or updated? What kind of programs and services might be needed throughout the community? What kind of partners and other approaches to providing those could be recommended? Of course, performance measures, evaluation, and asset management is very important, and then also what kind of investment needs and strategies, not just for the city, but what types of funding we can leverage and other kind of partnerships. So that's sort of the suggested plan timeline, and then, or the plan outline and the plan timeline that staff's recommending is, again, try to finish a lot of that existing conditions work through the end of the year and early into 2018. Really do some additional focused public outreach. Again, I think following these sort of strategies we've used with the Bike Share study has been very effective. And then releasing a more complete draft plan, we're suggesting around June. That's when we do Bike Month here. We have Active Commute Week, and we're actually hosting the state bicycle summit at Grand Valley this year. So we felt launching around that time might be a good opportunity to keep bicycling kind of in the forefront. So, questions, comments?
All right. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Jones?
No, just Kristen, kudos to you for the efforts of going to the community instead of hosting meetings in hopes that folks will show up. I just want to encourage you to continue to go far and wide, and be more than happy actually to have some conversations about, certain places you probably should be. And maybe you've hit them already, but just this idea of trying to get as much feedback and insight as possible from folks throughout the city. So,
other Commissioner?
Yes, I have a couple things. First of all, I'd love to get more information about Vision Zero. I'm excited about that. It's a national campaign.
That's actually coming up behind me. So
okay, well, I saw that actually on the agenda. That's right. We had a conversation this morning in CD about the CMAQ grant that we get, and just getting a sense, especially when we get to figuring out what our certain routes will be, that tension between air quality mitigation, and emissions versus right turns. Mm-hmm. And maybe that will wind up being just in certain routes. I don't know, but that's a big educational piece too. Got a lot of people here around this table that served on the school board, and I'm a former educator, and those are the things that we keep on hearing about too. Those really still, even though we've done all these campaigns, a lot more work has to go into, maybe through the school system for one thing, on on bike safety rules. And then I know that we want to start with education before we do enforcement, but I'm also hearing some concerns that for both sides of this, that both the automobiles and the bikes, that we
Sure.
start to maybe issue some tickets once in a while, because I know our bicyclists I see them going through intersections and it's so dangerous, and they need to follow the rules as well. And then my last question is, do we need to start thinking about cell phones and doing something around an ordinance around cell phones in the city? Because clearly that's one of the biggest things that causes the distracted drivers and potentially bike injuries. And I don't know, hopefully we're gathering some of that data with, in terms of right turns and cell phones when there are crashes.
I will note cell phone data is hard to, or distracted driving data, and is difficult to gather unless somebody admits it or they're seen. It is a challenge. It's likely higher than we know, reported wise, whether it's here locally or statewide or nationally. But I know that's, and certainly I think something we visually see a lot of people doing a lot of things besides driving. So, yeah.
Commissioner Lanier?
Yes. I think it was the slide before this one, if you could go back. So various types of bike highways or bikeways. So I'm curious to know, I was hoping that this plan would outline the plan to have bike highways or bikeways across the city. And I know, Eric, you and I have been talking about this a few times, and I've been pushing this, and you indicated that a plan would be coming forward, identifying ways in which people can travel by bike across the city, because what we're finding and experiencing is that for safety purposes, a lot of bikers are on sidewalks, and then that causes problems for pedestrians, or even bikers behaving like pedestrians, and then you have accidents and things of that nature. So it's kind of hard to teach safety practices when people aren't necessarily following the rules that they're supposed to follow. And so when will that come? When will we have a comprehensive plan about where it's best to have bikeways?
Well, this plan, according to the schedule that Kristen has outlined, is what will develop that and bring that forward to you for your consideration. So Kristen will be going out and working with the community to try to identify the areas where those should be, and that's actually why I asked her to bring these, so you can see that the work is kind of ongoing and that it's being developed. So the intent is to develop that and to bring it forward for adoption, and then we will begin to program those for construction.
So it's a community's decision about where the bikeways should be versus the structure of a city and traffic and things of that nature?
We have our ideas.
Okay.
Based on the Vital Streets plan and based on the mode analysis that came out of the Vital Streets plan. But there's also, we do engagement as well to find out information and try to determine the best place to make that investment.
So vetting those ideas with the community to get their feedback. I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So I am going to bring this to a close, and I'll just make a final comment. Kristen, I want to say thanks to you also for your work on this. I feel like we've been talking about this around this table for probably 2 years, and probably Commissioner Lanier has been the most vocal, saying we need a plan so we know where to make investments. And so thank you for your work on this. And then my last comment is that I was able to attend some of the meetings related to age-friendly city and get feedback. And one of the topics that we talk about during that process, not we, I didn't facilitate, I sat in, was transportation. And several of the folks that I talked to talked about how as they get older and they don't have a vehicle, they use a bike more, and how they want the city to feel safer, that they don't always feel safe. So I think that continues to be a message that we're all hearing from a number of populations in the city. So thank you for making that front and center.
We tabled at a few of the age-friendly communities, and then I've been in contact with Jenny to say, I want your transportation focus group feedback. So
Great.
Oh, good.
Great. Thank you.